Fentanyl was the most powerful opioid known to man. It's not anymore. It's 50 to 100 times stronger than morphine. It's used in pre and post surgery to alleviate excessive pain. It also now comes in a patch for chronic severe pain and in a lollipop. There's also an oral transmucosal tablet called Actic. Have you ever seen this stuff, Actic?
I don't think so. No.
Okay. Meant to be dissolved in the mouth, under the tongue, just like, oh, come on. Come on. Why can't I think of it? Come on, it has to do with nitro. Nitroglycerin.
Oh, yeah.
Nitroglycerin, okay. Street chemists have been able to replicate the structure of fentanyl, there's a shot for you, with a powerful drug called China White. So if you've ever heard of China White, it was supposed to be the super methamphetamine. Turns out that it's actually fentanyl is what it is. And it killed a lot of people because they thought they were using heroin. So they used the same dosage and they overdosed. Unfortunately, some of the street drug contains NPTP, which kills the dopamine-producing cells in the brain, resulting in Parkinson's disease at best, and at worst, a frozen addict who can't move for the rest of his life. Whoops. Fentanyl overdose deaths. Prince, of course, died of a fentanyl overdose at 57. Tom Petty died of, he had 3 different types, I think. I think he had 3 different types. And then he had a bunch of other junk in his system when he died at 66.
That wasn't that long ago, either.
That wasn't that long ago. Michelle McNamara, who is married to Patton Oswalt, she was an author. She overdosed on fentanyl. She wrote a book about serial killers, and it bothered her so much that she eventually committed suicide, even though she just had a kid, which may have had something to do with it. Okay, there you go. Well, fentanyl, once upon a time strongest opioid, now it's not. Dasuvia, the Food and Drug Administration has just approved Dasuvia last November. It was a split decision. It was like 5-4 that they approved it, and the head of the Food and Drug Administration was against it and is still against it, and he says that this is going to cause more deaths than fentanyl and heroin put together. But we'll see what happens. It's 10 times stronger than fentanyl. It's 1,000 times stronger than morphine. As if you can imagine, the only thing we really know about it is that you can't breathe the dust. If you, when they manufacture it, they have to use breathers because if they breathe the dust, they can die of overdose.
Dang.
Yeah.
I bet, huh?
From the dust. They had a 60 Minutes article about Dasuvia.
Oh, they did?
Yeah, they did, and
Do you think it's online?
well, you have to hose down after you go into the room where they make the stuff, because if you've got dust on your system, you take off your breather and you take off your clothes, the dust will still get in your head, or in your nose, so they have to hose them down after they come out of there for fear of the. And they hose them down for a really long time because you're cleaning out of the crevices of your suit.
What is it like made of? Is it made
Well,
of?
it's an opioid.
Like, is there like a lot of different things that is in it to make it?
No, it's just a stronger dose of opioid.
That's it.
That's it.
Does it come from a plant or is it manufactured?
No. It's manufactured. It comes out of China. There's a shock for you.
Man, Chinese people crazy.
Nice. Wow.
Yeah.
Levomethyl acetate, or LAAM, is a long-acting opioid that is used for heroin replacement therapy. LAAM lasts for 2 to 3 days, whereas methadone only lasts for 1 to 2 days. The biggest problem is that when you're on methadone treatment, you get your shot on the Friday. They have to send you home with another shot so that you can take a shot on Sunday. But with LAAM, of course, it lasts for 3 days, so you're good to go. You can get your shot on Friday and then on Monday, and you'll be okay. We don't really use it in the United States. There is the one that Scott was talking about. They've got LAAM treatment at one of the,
It's actually in the North Texas freaking VA
yeah.
in Dallas, Fort Worth. Yeah, it's the same area.
Yeah.
And that's the only place in the United States
That's
to
the only
use
one.
it?
Actually, that's the only one the vets have. There's another one
okay.
in Massachusetts. Naloxone and naltrexone are opioid antagonists blocking all the exogenous and endogenous opioids. These drugs can be given to people who have overdosed on opioids, blocking the deadly effects of the opioid structure. It's the only thing keeping some people alive, was the fact that they overdosed and they gave them a shot of naloxone or naltrexone, probably naltrexone. Unfortunately, naloxone is relatively short acting, and for that reason you need more than one dose. So if somebody has overdosed and they haven't come back yet, you have to give them another dose. They jacked up the price of naltrexone, when was it, 2 years ago, to $120 a dose. Yeah, so the manufacturer did. And it really upset people, because before it was, they increased it 10 times. It was like $12 a shot. And everybody could carry, naltrexone around. Then all of a sudden they jacked it up to $120. They got them to reduce it down. It's like, I don't know, $25 or $30 now, but it's still twice as much as it was before.
Yeah.
Naltrexone blocks the effects of opioids up to 72 hours to help prevent relapse. So naltrexone is the drug of choice if you're trying to save somebody's life. Subutex is a powerful opioid agonist at low doses, but at high doses it becomes an opioid antagonist. At low doses it is used as an analgesic substitute for morphine. It is 50 times stronger than heroin, so it's pretty strong stuff. At high doses it has an inverse agonistic effect and will block opioids from receptor sites for up to 30 hours. So they sometimes use it to treat individuals going through withdrawals.
How do they
high
get these
dose-
names?
I'm sorry?
Sorry, I'm gonna cut you off. How do they get these names?
Yeah, well, you'll have to ask our pharmacist over here. Nobody knows exactly where they come up with this stuff.
Because I know like some like, and then it has like on commercials.
Right.
Usually Fitzer puts them up.
Right,
It has like the name of it, like Allegra or something, right?
yeah.
And then it has like this big ass.
Exactly. Well, they need to give it a name that people can repeat, and that's why they give it the name Allegra. That's why this stuff is Subutex instead of buprenorphine, which makes it an opioid. The phene makes it an opioid. It has to do with the chemical structure and what's in it. Yeah, we're going to talk about more Bupros in just a second, and the orphine is morphine. So, you just stick the words together, or the name together.
So the name is a combination of what's actually in it.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
What chemicals are actually.
So what's in Prozac?
Prozac is, wait a minute, what is the chemical name for Prozac?
I look it up.
It's SSRI. Wait a minute, yeah. Zoloft is,
It's fluoxetine.
fluoxetine, yeah, fluoxetine.
Yeah.
Fluoxetine, that's right. Yeah, fluoxetine.
I'm gonna bring you this so the crab goes on. You'll be like, how the hell were you standing?
Yeah,
Fluoxetine.
yeah, fluoxetine.
Then what's Zoloft? Is Zoloft the same thing?
What?
Is Zoloft the same thing?
Zoloft? Well, Zoloft is, no, it's not fluoxetine, it's got another, leading chemical in it, but it's another ene. Zoloft and Prozac, Zoloft, and,
It's just sertraline,
Yeah,
sertraline,
yeah, so, yeah.
what is it?
Oh my gosh, man.
I know.
Sertraline.
Yeah. At high doses, it can be used as a part of an opioid treatment regimen because it blocks the effect of the opioids while taking the edge off some of the side effects. Clonidine or Catapres is often used to diminish nausea, anxiety, and diarrhea from opioid withdrawal symptoms. It also reduces opioid craving. It reduces the overactivity of norepinephrine receptors and can cut withdrawal time in half, used in conjunction with naltrexone. Clonidine can reduce withdrawal recovery from 1 month to 5 days. So there you go. So go to Betty Ford and you get clean in 5 days instead of a month. There's your stuff. Butorphanol or Stadol and Tramadol, Ultram. These new synthetic opioids are developed as less abusable or addictive analgesics. These drugs are still abused and have been classified as Schedule IV drugs. So they'll abuse anything.
Yeah, they give out a lot of tramadol at
Oh, is
a
that
lot
right?
of these clinics on the reservation.
Well, that's great.
I know, like, some people get like 120 pills for 1 month. So that's like 3 times a day,
Oh, okay.
4 times a day.
Oh, my God. They
Yeah.
must be in a lot of pain.
I guess, I've seen, like, when we dispensed them out, like, we have that machine that, dispenses it out for us, and so we just put in the amount that is needed, and
Yeah.
then they fill it up. So
Oh,
like,
my God.
I think the most I've seen is probably like 160, but.
Talk
usually-
about a bucket. You
It's a-
must have.
They're like really fat, like those things, it's probably like this big, like
Oh,
this.
my goodness.
Yeah, they're big.
What is that for? Klonopin.
Klonopin?
Mm.
We're gonna talk about it in a minute. Oh, it's right there. It's a benzodiazepine.
I mean, what,
It's an anti-anxiety drug. Okay. It helps your GABA. Any drug that relaxes and soothes the body and the mind are known as sedatives. If it eases anxiety or induces sleep, it's a hypnotic. The 2 main categories are benzodiazepines and barbiturates. Examples of benzodiazepines would be alprazolam and clonazepam. All the PAMs are benzodiazepines, as weird as that sounds. So Xanax and Klonopin. Example of barbiturates are any barbitals, phenobarbital, cyclobarbital. Okay. Just under half of all prescriptions for psychiatric medications are written for antidepressants. The first sedatives were bromides, also used as anticonvulsants in the 1850s. Biggest problem with these drugs was the fact that they had a long half-life, so toxic levels could build up in the body, and this is, of course, one of the things that we have to look at when we give people these sedatives. We have to keep drawing their blood to find out if they're developing a toxic level. Around the American Civil War, chloral hydrate started being used as a sleep aid and a sedative. We're going to talk about chloral hydrate in just a second. This is a kind of an amazing drug because it is 3 molecules of alcohol. So you take 3 molecules of alcohol and stick them together, and that's chloral hydrate. So you take this pill and you get drunk almost instantaneously, and it knocks you out. That's what chloral hydrate does. As much fun as that is.
the stuff they use in the spy movies, huh?
This is what they used to knock people out back in the.
No, but I mean, when they have the,
Yeah, you could, well, it takes a couple minutes for this to work. I was watching, and I shouldn't have done this, I should have been working, but I was watching a movie last night. Around the World in 80 Days. And the guy was in Hong Kong, and somebody slipped him a Mickey Finn. And it took him about a minute to pass out. And he didn't wake up until 2 days later. Anyway, that's what it is, chloral hydrate. is what the Mickey Finn was. That's how they used to Shanghai sailors. They would drop a Mickey Finn in their drink. They drink it, of course, and this is a super dose. And if they survived, sometimes they poisoned. They gave them too much alcohol and they poisoned them. But if they survived, then they had a new sailor on their ship. 1882, physicians began using formaldehyde to control alcohol withdrawal symptoms. It is still sometimes used to treat alcohol withdrawal symptoms despite addictive properties, and it stinks. It smells so bad. Can't believe anybody uses this stuff. Barbiturates were first developed at the end of the 19th century, and their popularity peaked in the 1930s and 1940s. What was going on in the 1930s? The Depression. Barbiturates are any compound synthesized from barbituric acid, phenobarbital, cyclobarbital, and phenobarbital, pentobarbital, cyclobarbital, phenobarbital. These substances are highly addictive and fairly toxic, making them fairly dangerous, and for that reason, we try to stay away from barbiturates. Miltown or meprobamate was used fairly extensively as a sedative in the late 1940s into the 1950s. It became popular with housewives and came to be known as Mother's Little Helper. And of course, if you've listened to the Rolling Stones, they used to sing a song about Mother's Little Helper. Well, what they were talking about was Miltown. Less dangerous than barbiturates, it maintained its popularity until the 1960s when benzodiazepines were developed, and then benzodiazepines took over. Doradin was also used as a barbiturate substitute. Unfortunately, it was weaker than phenobarbital. It was just as addictive as barbiturates. There you go. It's weaker, but it's more addictive. It is no longer manufactured in the United States because there's no reason to manufacture it in the United States. Librium and Valium are two drugs that we used to give out by the bucket load, literally by the bucket load. We would get all of our other drugs in gallon containers, and we would get Valium and Librium in 5-gallon buckets. This is the military. This is during the Vietnam War. Well, we weren't giving them to the soldiers, we were giving them to the airmen. We were giving them to the wives of the airmen. That's what was happening. And we did this so that they wouldn't complain about their husbands being deployed. And yeah, there was a lot of anxiety taking place. Of course, it was the hippie 60s and 70s, so there was a lot of strange things going on. Librium was the first benzodiazepine developed in 1954. It's a muscle relaxant. Along with diazepam, these two drugs dominated the sedative hypnotic market until the invention of Prozac. Thought to be a good alternative to the highly addictive barbiturates, benzodiazepines proved to be very addictive themselves with just as dangerous withdrawals as the barbiturates. And of course, this is what we learned from all the addicted military wives during Vietnam. Scott and I were talking about this the other day. 8 million men served in Vietnam. 14 million men were in the service during Vietnam. A lot of people were shipped to Germany instead. Instead of Vietnam, they went to Germany. And the reason they sent them to Germany was because of the Russians. Of course, we were trying to block the communists from taking over Europe. So we had lots of troops in Europe at the same time as we had troops in Vietnam. Okay. Today there are several new drugs that are being advertised as less addictive. Lunesta, you don't really see Lunesta advertisements on television anymore. You used to see Boost Bar advertisements because...
Actually, you do. It's got the butterfly on it.
Lunesta, yeah. I don't know, maybe I watched the wrong channels, but I haven't seen
There's
it.
a letter TCM.
Yeah, see, that's what I need. I need to watch more TCM. Lunesta, Boost Bar, they used to advertise as a good alternative. It's an antidepressant that doesn't have sexual side effects. Most antidepressants, and I hope you tell people this, if they take antidepressants, it increases their serotonin level and they lose their sex drive.
Well, the pharmacists are the one that counseled the patients.
Thank you, Raj. I've been on the First one and the
Lunesta.
fourth one.
And the fourth one, Ambien? Okay. I hope they took you off of it.
Yeah. Well, the
Yeah,
Ambien
both of-
wasn't working. They started me off at like 10. It wasn't working, so they put me on the Lunesta. And
Did it put you to sleep?
now, and then they just gave me, what's it,
Catapress?
Trazodone.
Trazodone, oh,
They gave me
okay.
Trazodone, I was out for like 13 hours.
Which is also an SSRI, okay. And that's the one that makes people jump over delta wave sleep. So you probably felt tired, even though you were sleeping, you still felt tired.
Oh no, I was up for like 3 days, I couldn't sleep.
That's not good. Lunesta, Boost Bar, Rosarim, Ambien, of course, they talk about that in Lyrica. Lyrica. People are developing, it's an antipsychotic, as weird as that is. And so people are developing tardive dyskinesia from taking Lyrica.
What's that?
Lyrica?
No, what you just said.
Tardive dyskinesia. Tardive dyskinesia is where you get a facial tic, and it's from the drug. It's permanent. There's nothing you can do about it. So once you develop this facial tic, it's gone. I mean, you'll have it forever. You know, you just can't control yourself. It's just there, and that's what tardive dyskinesia is. And normally we only see them with antipsychotics. And Lyrica is a weak antipsychotic that they give to people with depression or anxiety in order to control. It's an additive to the. It's supposed to be an additive. This is some really weird stuff. Some people just don't react the way they're supposed to react. I don't know what's wrong with people. They're supposed to react to drugs only one way, and they don't. Only Boost Bar and Rosarim have been proven to be less addictive. The rest of them are really, really addictive, and that's the problem with Ambien, and that's the problem with Lunesta. You need to just stay away from these things because they are highly addictive, despite the fact they're sleep aids, okay? Yeah. Sedative hypnotics proved to be so addictive that their use waxed and waned over the years, usually had to do with the doctors and what they thought. Also had to do with the drug companies, because the drug companies were coming through and they were saying, well, we've changed the dosage, we've changed the configuration of Lunesta, it's not nearly as addictive as it was before. And then the doctors started using it again, and damn it, it turned out to be just as addictive as it was before. They lied. Drug companies lied to sell drugs. I know it's a shock. At this point in time, benzodiazepines are used sparingly, and they have been replaced by psychiatric medications that are less addictive, and there is a lower possibility of adding them to other medications to get high. At least that's what we're hoping. And of course, that's what the drug companies tell you every time they come through. I used to, the drug companies used to come by. The drug companies used to hire beauty queens to sell drugs. And so they'd come by, and of course they wanted to see the doctor. And of course I was working in the laboratory, and they would always stop in the laboratory before they went to see the doctor, or they were waiting to see the doctor, so they needed somebody to talk to. So I'd get to talk to all these people, and they would start telling me about the drugs. And then eventually they would tell me the real truth. Well, they said they changed the configuration, but they didn't. They didn't change anything. But that's what we're supposed to say. It's sad. Drug companies can lie. However, sedative hypnotics can still be abused. The drug is overused when prescribed by a physician. It is used in combination with other psychoactive substances for the synergistic or counteractive effect. And of course, people start mixing their drugs, and we're going to talk about people that mix drugs. The drugs are borrowed or stolen from someone as a form of self-medication. The drugs are obtained by other illegal means, for example, forged prescriptions or buying on the black market. Now we're going to talk about dead people. We talked about 3, now we're gonna talk about more. This is, the list of celebrities who have died from barbiturate overdoses is extremely long. Marilyn Monroe had high doses of Nimbutal and chloral hydrate in her system when she died. She also drank it down with champagne. So she drank down chloral hydrate with another alcohol, which of course it's a synergistic situation. Not only
That's
that,
crazy.
Nimbutal, of course, is a barbiturate. Whoops. So she mixed a barbiturate with alcohol, which has a synergistic effect as well. So in essence, she committed suicide. Dorothy Dandridge had high levels of the tricyclic antidepressant imipramine, also known as tofranil, when she was found. Tricyclics, dangerous drugs, really antidepressants.
She was an actress, right?
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah, well, you can see how attractive she was. She was said to be the most beautiful woman in the world when she was alive. But she didn't make very many movies. Jimi Hendrix was a notorious drug mixer. Hendrix had a high level of secobarbital in his system when he asphyxiated on his own vomit. That's the best way to go.
That's happened to drummer on Zeppelin too.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that. The drugs were prescribed to his girlfriend, not to him. Bruce Lee, the quintessential martial arts expert, died from an allergic reaction to a painkiller containing aspirin and meprobamate. He theoretically didn't know that meprobamate was in the mixture. He thought he was taking aspirin. Freddie Prinze shot himself while under the influence of Quaaludes. Prinze was the star of the hit sitcom Chico and the Man, something you guys don't remember because it was on before you were born, both of you. Elvis Presley was a notorious prescription pill mixer. When he died, he had 14 different drugs in his system, including codeine, Quaaludes, and methaqualone. What a guy.
Go big or go home, huh?
And he died on the toilet. That's a place to go. Yeah. Keith Moon was a drummer for The Who and an alcoholic when he tried to clean up. The drug he was using was a sedative, clomethazole. He had 10 times the daily dose in his system when he died. And he took it with alcohol, of course. Abby Hoffman was a 60s anti-war activist. Hoffman was found with 150 tabs of phenobarbital in his stomach, and his death, of course, was ruled a suicide. There you go. Steve Clark was the lead guitarist of Def Leppard. Clark was found by his girlfriend with respiratory failure from the use of painkillers, Valium, antidepressants, and alcohol. Margot Hemingway was an actress and the granddaughter of the iconic author Ernest Hemingway. Granddaughter Hemingway was found dead with an overdose of phenobarbital on the 35th anniversary of her grandfather's suicide. Her grandfather shot himself in the head with a 12-gauge shotgun. But of course, Margot decided to take the easier route, and she put herself to sleep with phenobarbital. Rob Pilatus, Milli of Milli Vanilli. You guys don't remember Milli Vanilli,
Yeah.
but they were big-time dancers with really big, heavy boots on it.
But they were fakes.
Yeah, they couldn't sing. He died of a heart attack induced by a sedative given to him to help with alcohol withdrawals. Of course, he took the sedative with alcohol. That's so
80s
stupid.
were a crazy time.
Dana Plato was an actress in the sitcom Different Strokes. She died from a mixture of Soma, which is a muscle relaxant, and Vicodin. Plato had a long history of prescription drug abuse. Here's my favorite, Old Dirty Bastard. He was the lightning rod of the rapper band Wu-Tang Clan. He died after mixing tramadol, which is a painkiller, with cocaine. Not the smartest thing in the world to do. Chris Penn is an actor. He was in Dirty Dancing. No, not Dirty Dancing. What is that dancing movie with Kevin Bacon in it? I can't think of.
Footloose.
Footloose. There you go. Okay. Yeah, he was.
Yeah, he was a lot skinnier, but
Yeah. He was the. Yeah, he was the cowboy in Footloose. Chris Penn and actor and brother Sean Penn died from a mixture of promethazine, which is an antihistamine, and codeine. The combination mixed with obesity created a fatal enlargement of his heart, and he died. R&B singer Gerald Levert died from a combination of Percocet, Vicodin, Darvocet, Xanax, and 2 antihistamines. There you go, let's just mix them all. Take them
Might as
all,
well.
whole fistful. Anna Nicole Smith, whose son died 2 days before she did of a drug overdose in her hospital room. She was a blousy blonde, as you can see. She was a Playboy bunny from Texas who shocked the world by marrying a man in his 80s who was a billionaire. And he was in a wheelchair when she married him. She married him. Did she marry him for his money? Of course not. She married him for love. Everybody knows that. She died of 11 drugs in her system, including Ativan, Cirax, Clonopin, chloral hydrate, Lexapro, Valium, Noctec, and Zoloft. She had just had a baby 2 weeks before, and she overdosed on all
Think it
those
was
drugs.
postpartum?
No, well, her son had just died 2 days before in her hospital room.
Oh.
It wasn't a hospital room. It was at it's owned by the Choctaw or the Chickasaw. Something with a guitar. I don't know. Anyways, one of their resorts.
Oh,
They used to have these places all over the world, actually.
What?
It's a bar, but it's
Hard Rock Cafe?
Hard Rock Cafe. Yeah,
Oh.
it's owned by the Chickasaw. Yeah, and they had just bought it, as a matter of fact.
and where was that at, located?
It was down in Florida.
On Florida?
Yeah.
I was the one in Miami or freaking what's the other city?
I've been to the Hard Rock in Denver.
I went to the one in San Diego. Actually, I got kicked out of the one in San Diego. Right?
Yeah.
And I've been to the one in LA and San Francisco. I've been to all of them, California.
There you go. Okay. Well, it's owned by one of the tribes. Posthumous Academy Award winner Heath Ledger died with 6 drugs in his system: oxycodone, hydrocodone, Xanax, Valium, doxalamine, and temazepam. Temazepam. Oh, so, wait a minute, he's already taking Xanax. Why the hell's he taking temazepam?
That's a lot, that's crazy.
That's stupid. Oh, did I say stupid? I didn't mean that. I meant something else. Okay, it's smart.
Yeah, it's really smart of them.
Michael Jackson had a number of drugs in his system when he died, but the combination that killed him were propofol, lorazepam, midazolam, and Valium. And of course, all of these things are sedatives that put you to sleep and put him to sleep forever.
Forever.
Officially, Corey Haim died of pneumonia, but the actor had been fighting drug addiction most of his adult life. He was found unresponsive with lethal doses of Valium. He had lethal doses of each of these drugs, okay? Valium, Vicodin, Soma, and Haloperidol. He had lethal doses of each and every one of
I
them.
just watched The Lost Boys a couple of days ago.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Well, he was one of the lost boys. I guess he really was lost. Here's somebody else that was lost. Amy Winehouse was a notorious drug experimenter who went through rehab several times before she died at 27. She had started several episodes of binge drinking and then abstaining before her death. She died of alcohol poisoning with an alcohol level of 0.416, which is a lot.
That is a lot.
That is a lot. And it was vodka. She was drinking vodka.
Isn't it the legal dosage was like 0.08 or something?
0.08, exactly.
That's 5 times, right?
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
she was like half a beer.
What? 0.08? No, that's one beer. It's a whole beer.
It's like 16 ounces, like a pint, right?
No, it's 12 ounces.
12 ounces? I thought it was 16.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, unless
Hey,
it's
man, it's not
phosphorus.
Europe.
Yeah, in
Hey,
Europe.
the Seminole on Hard Rock.
Seminole. Okay.
At
I'm
2006.
Okay. thank you.
Dang, 965 million, the bottom up.
There you go.
Crap.
It's nice to be, see, you guys are in the wrong track. You need to be Seminole. Whitney Houston. Whitney Houston had been a notorious drug mixer most of her adult life. She was found drowned in her bathtub with high levels of cocaine, Flexeril, Benadryl, Xanax, and marijuana. Her daughter died exactly the same way, drowned in her bathtub. As stupid as that sounds. Judy Garland had been a child star and had started a pattern of excessive work days fueled by uppers and downers. At 47, she died of a secobarbital overdose. Philip Seymour Hoffman was a highly talented actor nominated for 4 Academy Awards, of which he won once. He died at 46 from an overdose of heroin, cocaine, amphetamines, and benzodiazepines. We've already talked about Tom Petty. Died at 66 with 3 forms of fentanyl in his system, along with oxycodone and 3 types of benzodiazepines. It sounds like he was trying to commit suicide, and he was very successful. Kurt Cobain was the iconic frontman for the alternative rock band Nirvana. Cobain died of a shotgun blast. He had excessive amounts of heroin and Valium in his system when he shot himself at age 27. Shot himself in the stomach. Dumbest place in the world to ever shoot
A
yourself.
lot of these guys died at 27, right?
Yes.
I don't know, that takes a lot of effort with the shotgun.
Well, yeah, it's one of these things.
Yeah.
Yeah, so everybody thinks he was murdered. Oh, there's some more 27s.
His wife did, man.
Jim Morrison was the lead singer for the San Francisco band The Doors. Morrison considered himself a poet and a philosopher as well as a singer. Morrison died of a heroin overdose in his bathtub, once again in his bathtub at age 27. Janis Joplin was a rock star from the late 60s and early 70s. She partied with such iconic figures as the Grateful Dead and Country Joe and the Fish. She died at 27 of a heroin overdose. She never went on stage sober.
Yeah,
Okay.
I've seen her performances.
Yeah, she's kind of had an amazing voice.
She did.
Prince died in 2016. We already talked about his fentanyl overdose at age 57. He had actually died twice. He died on a flight from Dallas to Minneapolis. He lived in Minneapolis, and he died on the flight. And they had to land at an airport. They landed at Moline Airport, right near my house. And then they brought him revived. Yeah, they were reviving. 2 days later, he died of a same overdose, fentanyl overdose, in his elevator in his house. John Belushi was one of the major original players on Saturday Night Live. He played Joliet Jake Blues of the Blues Brothers. In 1982, Belushi overdosed on a speedball at 33, given to him by his girlfriend. River Phoenix was a child actor from the late 80s who was headed for success. The star of Stand By Me, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and Sneakers. He died of a speedball overdose outside a club in Los Angeles at 23. He died on the sidewalk. There were hundreds of people around, and they all just watched him die. Nobody tried to do anything to help him.
They said that the club is called the Viper Room.
Yeah.
They said it's haunted.
Oh, it's haunted by River? Chris Farley was a comedian of SNL fame. He starred in such wonderful movies as Tommy Boy and Beverly Hills Ninja, which were 2 of the worst movies ever made. He died of a speedball overdose at 33, just like his hero John Belushi. And of course, it's always good to die, just like your hero dies. At present, benzodiazepines are the most widely used sedative hypnotics in the United States. Benzodiazepines vary in their half-lives and can cause tissue dependence. For this reason, they can be highly addictive with severe withdrawal symptoms. Most physicians only use benzodiazepines as short-term fixes for specific conditions. Now, we do that. They do that, I'm sorry, not we. In order of usage, the most widely prescribed benzodiazepines are Xanax, 34 million prescriptions, Ativan, 19 million prescriptions, Klonopin, 16.7 million prescriptions, Valium, 12 million prescriptions, and Restoril, 7.6 million prescriptions. As you can see, Valium used to be the most popular drug in the world. It's not anymore. Now it's Viagra. I still can't understand. I still can't understand that. It just doesn't make any sense. I can understand old farts getting Viagra, but why so, everybody's, I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know if there comes a day I have to get that, I'm done.
You're not gonna use it?
I'm fucking done.
Okay, you're just done.
Yeah.
No more sex.
No.
Benzodiazepines are used to reduce symptoms of anxiety and panic disorders. They reduce anxiety and apprehension in surgical patients. They treat sleep problems. They control skeletal muscle spasms. They control seizures, and they dampen acute alcohol withdrawal symptoms. So benzodiazepines are something that we can use. Unfortunately, they are too often abused. Side effects of benzodiazepine usage is very similar to alcohol. Benzodiazepines are most often abused in conjunction with other drugs as they are used to lessen the effects of withdrawal symptoms. People take them with methamphetamines, cocaine, and heroin to lessen the symptoms. In one study, 100% of the benzodiazepine addicts were addicted to other substances at the same time. The typical benzodiazepine abuser is a white, well-educated, 30-year-old female. So it's more often women than men. Why? Because they are prescribed the drugs as an anti-anxiety drug. Women suffer from anxiety more frequently than men do. Benzodiazepines work because they increase the effects of the inhibiting neurotransmitter GABA in the cerebellum, the cerebral cortex, and the limbic system. There you go. That's the whole damn brain. Yeah, okay. The stronger influence of GABA inhibits anxiety-producing thoughts and overstimulation of neural messages. Benzodiazepines are metabolized by the liver to produce more powerful metabolites, and this is the problem. This is why you get a synergistic effect from alcohol, because you take the benzodiazepine and then the metabolites are actually stronger than the drug that you just took. The original drug and the metabolites tend to stay in the body for an extended period of time because they are extremely fat-soluble or lipophilic. Lipophilic and fat-soluble are the same things. Alprazolam, Xanax, is used for generalized anxiety disorder, panic disorder, and depression. Triazolam, Halcyon, and I thought we had stopped using Halcyon. They had a really serious problem with this back in the 90s with Halcyon. They were throwing Halcyon at everybody. Anybody with panic disorder, they were throwing Halcyon, and they had some really bad reactions from it. So I thought they had stopped using Halcyon. But evidently I'm incorrect, because half these guys that overdosed with Trazolam in their system. It is used for short-term treatment of insomnia, 7 to 10 days, which was stupid. Why are we using such an addictive drug as a sleep aid? Diazepam or Valium is used for anxiety, skeletal muscle spasms, control of seizures. IV Valium is used as a sedative before surgery. So diazepam is still being used a lot. Tolerance has to do with liver efficiency. Older individuals will have a stronger reaction than a younger person. Overdose of benzodiazepines can cause dementia-like symptoms in the elderly. And of course, we see this all the time in nursing homes. Tissue dependence can occur with excessive use over several months or normal dosage over a year. So if we treat somebody with benzodiazepines and then they try to go off of them, or we treat them because they have anxiety or panic attacks, and then they go off of them, what will happen is a rebound effect, and their anxiety will come back stronger than it was when we put them on it. And that's the problem with benzodiazepines. Tissue dependence can occur with excessive use over several months or normal dosage over a year. Because of the drug's lipophilic properties, even small doses over time can cause tissue dependence.
What does that mean?
What?
Uh,
Lipophilic?
Yeah.
Lipophilic means fat soluble, means that it goes into your fat cells, just like marijuana. Marijuana it just stays in your fat cells. And anything that's lipophilic will stay in your system for an extended length of time. Because if it's water soluble, you pee it out, and it clears out of your system relatively quickly. But if it's lipophilic and gets into your fat cells, now you've got it for a while. It's going to be in there. So the biggest problem is if you take benzodiazepines and you're not supposed to, and you go and take a drug urine test for the Army, it's going to be positive. And they're going to wonder why you're taking a drug that you weren't prescribed.
I said to me before, I forgot to give my PSG, my updated medication list. Oh yeah, freaking send me the CID. I'm like, what the hell? Man, I got a prescription for it right here. Well, you didn't tell us. I'm like, you guys can't find out.
Well, they're just trying to make sure you're not
Have you seen that show, Seinfeld?
Seinfeld.
Mhm.
Sure.
Remember, I think it was Elaine's the one that ate a muffin that had poppy seed. And then
Oh,
she
and
had
it turned out she had a
and she
positive.
had positive for opioids in her system. And then she used, was it the mother or somebody's urine? And then they're like, now you're positive for menopause or something like that. And she couldn't go on the trip or something.
Poor Elaine.
That's funny.
Withdrawal from benzodiazepines can be severe and take several months to taper off from the drug. Symptoms include recurrence of original symptoms, and usually that's anxiety or panic attacks, magnification of symptoms, and that's the rebound effect that I was talking about before. Exaggeration of the recurrence of the symptoms, once again, the rebound effect. True withdrawal caused by low GABA and excessive epinephrine and norepinephrine. And of course, this really is a serious problem because with a low GABA level, of course, you have anxiety, excessive anxiety. Onset of withdrawal begins after 1 day with a short-acting benzodiazepine and lasts for 7 to 20 days, depending on which one it is. For long-acting benzodiazepines, withdrawal begins after 5 days and takes up to 28 days for the symptoms to subside. It takes 28 days to clear it from your system. Rohypnol is a benzodiazepine that causes short-term memory loss and sedation. The drug has been used for short-term memory impairment and has been used as a date-rape drug since the 1970s.
It's a roofie.
Rohypnol, roofies, yeah. Rohypnol has been banned in the United States along with GHB since 1996. Was used by, I don't know if we should talk about this. It was used by Bill Cosby. This is the stuff he used. He was sedating them with this stuff.
Did he put it in like
Their drinks, yeah.
Oh, okay.
He put it in their drinks, and he's Bill Cosby. He's got 6 kids. He's got a wonderful wife. Why in the world would he do this to people? Well, that was just his thing, I guess.
It's
I don't know.
really,
I've been on the next one.
Well,
The one I'm about to talk about, I've been on that.
Boost Bar?
Yep.
Okay.
And the next one.
Lunesta, okay. Boost Bar is commonly prescribed as an anxiolytic and in combination with an SSRI to treat depression. So that's what they usually use Boost Bar for. They use it, people use it as an antidepressant and an anti-anxiety drug because it doesn't have a sexual side effect. Boost Bar does not increase your GABA level. This drug does not seem to cause addiction and is rarely abused. This drug cannot be used to treat seizures, and for that reason sometimes they don't like to use it. Lunesta is a hypnotic drug prescribed for insomnia. The drug increases your GABA production, leading to relaxation. This substance is only addictive when taken with another drug. And there you go. Placidil and chloral hydrate. Placidil is actually a chemical ether, as stupid as that sounds. So take a drug that knocks you out. Chloral hydrate is, and we talked about this before, is actually 3 molecules of ethyl alcohol fused together, as interesting as that is. Both these drugs were prescribed to induce sleep and have a long history of addictive use and toxic overdose. And that's the biggest problem with Placidil and chloral hydrate. Anna Nicole Smith died with chloral hydrate in her system. GHB is a rapid sleep inducer. GHB increases the body's level of growth hormone. It affects our sedation, disinhibition, empathy, and sensory enhancement and euphoria. Its effects last for 3 to 6 hours. You can't remember anything, but you lose your inhibitions, and that's one of the reasons why GHB is used as a date rape drug. And of course, it makes them feel good while they're doing whatever it is that you're forcing them to do. And they lose their inhibitions, so they're more likely to perform whatever it is that you want them to perform. And then after you're done, it knocks them out, and they put them in a car, they leave them someplace. And of course, they've had a good time, and the individual has no memory of what happened except for the pain that they feel from whatever you did to them. That's the,
Yeah.
I know, it's,
Fucked up.
yeah, fucked up. It's real. These drugs, GBL and BD, are drugs, they metabolize into GHB. So they're 2 more date rape drugs. These 2 substances have been formulated into mint-flavored rape drugs. Blue Nitro, Revivrant, Gamma G, Rimforce, and Ensam X. We won't go into why they call one of them Rimforce, but this has to do with, it's a rave drug. So people in Europe will take this stuff, and then they will, of course, they don't remember anything about the rave that they were just at, and sometimes they come back after having sex that they didn't know they were having, or sex that they wouldn't have had normally, but they had because they couldn't fight anybody off. As stupid as that sounds. Anyway, I know, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that does.
Quaalude, what do you do for a good time?
I mean, if you can't remember it, how do you know it was a good time?
Well, people get drunk and they don't remember what happened to them.
I know, but the majority of the time when people use alcohol, they know what is happening at the beginning. But
At the beginning, there you go.
But with this, it's like the whole time, and it's weird.
Well, at least somebody else was having a good time. How's that?
No, that doesn't make sense.
Quaalude's effects are similar to those caused by alcohol and linger for 60 to 90 minutes. The sedating effect lasts for 6 to 10 hours. This is a drug that is often abused in South Africa, Quaaludes. So if you go to South Africa, be careful. They'll try to sell this stuff to you on the streets. Lyrica, this drug is used to treat nerve pain from the shingles or diabetes and can be part of a seizure treatment. More recently has been used for the treatment of anxiety, sleep, and mood disorders. This substance is rarely abused alone. Lyrica, of course, as I told you before, it's an antipsychotic, and I'm not exactly sure why they're doing this. Probably because people aren't reacting to other drugs, and that's what the advertisement on television says. If your antidepressant isn't working, then talk to your physician about adding Lyrica to your drug regimen. Mm-hmm. And of course, it's an antipsychotic, so potentially it will have more of an effect on your depression than whatever your antipsychotic is doing. Resirem activates melatonin receptors in the brain. Melatonin is a substance that helps maintain the circadian rhythm. It's used for short-term treatment only. When it's taken with alcohol, the result can be toxic. Why in the world would you take a sleep drug with alcohol? just either drink the alcohol or take the drug, but don't put the two of them together. That's just stupid.
Because it gets boring in the barracks.
These are the 3 Z drugs. This is really kind of interesting. These drugs are short-acting drugs with 1 to 4 hour half-lives, and that's good because they leave your system after about 4 hours. So if you have insomnia, it'll put you to sleep, and then hopefully that's the type of insomnia you have, and you'll stay asleep. But
Yeah.
after you wake up refreshed because it's no longer in your system. If you take too much of this stuff, you get nausea, headaches, diarrhea, and drowsiness. In other words, it's still in your system and you're non-functional.
Yeah.
These drugs are rarely abused except with other drugs, of course, and that is the end of our sedative hypnotics. There we go, there's Prince. Our favorite. Purple Rain was one of the most iconic albums ever made.
Yeah.
The movie too, isn't it?
Yeah, the movie was kind of interesting. Yeah, but the album had like 9 hit songs on it or something. That album and Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Okay, well, let's talk about alcohol. Since we killed all those people off with alcohol and some other drug, let's just kill people off with alcohol. The majority of people worldwide drink alcoholic beverages. The majority of people do drink alcohol. This doesn't include Islamic countries where it is not allowed by Quranic law. But a lot of these guys, when they leave their Muslim countries, they will drink alcohol because it's the manly thing to do. I used to play soccer with Saudi Arabians, and geez, they were good.
They're really serious about their soccer.
They were really good. I had one guy I was playing against, and he was from Saudi Arabia, and he said, "I'm going to score on your butt," and I said, "What? What are you talking about?" He said, "I'm going to score on your butt," and I'm thinking, "You idiot! I'm playing defense, and he's playing offense." And he did. He shot a ball, and it hit me in the butt, and it bounced right into the corner of the goal. That's what he was talking about. I couldn't figure out what he was going to score on my butt. I thought he was going to rape me or something. But he just hit and it hurt too. I'll tell you what. I had a mark of a soccer ball on my ass for a long time. China's alcohol consumption has doubled. This is good news or bad news.
What is their age?
Drinking age?
Yeah.
In India?
In China.
In China? Oh, it's 18.
18. So, what were you saying was 16?
16 in Europe.
Just in Europe only?
Yeah, just in Europe.
Okay.
It's 18 in India as well. India's alcohol consumption has increased 50%. 23% of English boys and 27% of English girls 15 to 16 were drunk 3 times or more in the past month.
Shoot, man, you see that downtown San Diego, man?
That's downtown San Diego?
No, I'm saying, you see that?
Yeah, it's not.
Girls on that egg, oh my God, we're at the beach.
Russian men consume the equivalent of 6 to 7 bottles of vodka per capita per year. That's a lot of booze. 75,000 alcoholics are homeless in Japan out of a total of 100,000 homeless. Around the world, more than 2 million people died due to alcohol last year. Approximately 10% of all diseases and injuries around the world were a direct result of alcohol abuse, like drunk driving. Last month, at least 126 million Americans, 52% of all Americans 12 and older, had at least 1 beer, 1 glass of wine, or 1 cocktail. 16 million of this group are considered heavy drinkers. And the 3 of us don't drink, so that's a lot of other people. Next month is St. Patrick's Day, a day that is a holiday that people use as an excuse to get drunk. More than 2/3 of the 11 million American college students at 4-year colleges had 1 drink and more than 2/3 of these drinkers had 5 or more drinks on at least one occasion in the past year. And of course, this is a beer bong, I think, yeah.
It's a small one, man.
Oh, they're all gonna get their beer. About 6.2% of 8th grade students, 18.5% of 10th grade students, and 30% of 12th grade students have been drunk in the United States. Yesterday, about $250 million was spent at bars, restaurants, and liquor stores for alcoholic beverages in the United States. Yesterday, 7,500 brides and grooms were toasted with champagne in the United States. 25 to 30% of all hospital admissions in the United States were due to direct or indirect medical complications from alcohol. Nothing more irritating than working in the emergency room and everybody that comes in is coming in because they've been drinking. It's just the most irritating thing in the world. You want to save people's lives and you got to deal with all of these drunks coming in. It's just really frustrating. About half of the murder victims and half of the murderers in the United States were drinking alcohol at the time of their crime. More than half of the rapes that occurred in the United States involved alcohol. About half of American adults have a close family member who has or has had alcoholism. And I have alcoholism in my family, not in my immediate family, thank goodness. None of my brothers or sister is an alcoholic, but I have a brother-in-law that's an alcoholic. That's always fun. I told you about the Addams family, and 1D Addams family, not the ADD AMS, that's the freaky people.
Oh,
Okay, not those guys. I'm related to John and John Quincy Adams. Both of them had 3 boys in their, they both had 3 boys in their family, and of those 3 boys, 2 of them were alcoholics and died of alcoholism. Yeah, and those are the presidents of the United States. Of course, John Quincy is the one that wasn't the alcoholic, but he had 2 brothers that both of them died of alcoholism in their 30s. And then he had 3 boys, and 2 of them died in their 30s of alcoholism, as sad as that is. But then they married into a Quaker family. Quakers don't drink, so there you go. That's how we got out of that alcoholism. But the Adams group that still lives in the Massachusetts area, they are still alcoholic. They are still alcoholics. In the United States, 2,700,000 crime victims reported that the offender had been drinking alcohol prior to committing the crime. Alcohol and marijuana, people say, oh, marijuana just makes you mellow, man. Well, that's true, kind of, but if you're smoking pot and drinking alcohol at the same time, it makes you violent. And they've done studies, and that's what they've discovered. Isn't it?
No, my brother-in-law, he does both, and he's too.
He's just
He watches
still
TV.
mellow?
Yeah, he
Watches
TV.
TV? Okay.
No,
Yeah.
then he just goes to sleep on the couch.
Well, good. I'm glad
But
it
I guess
works
it
for
depends on the
somebody.
person,
It doesn't work for most people. Every year, alcohol abuse and addiction costs businesses, the judicial system, medical facilities, and the United States more than $186 billion, or more than $638 for every man, woman, and child. So, and we all get to pay for that. So congratulations, you're paying for somebody else's drinking. Alcohol may be as old as civilized man. Evidence of fermented beverages have been found in China that are at least 9,000 years old. A beer recipe was found in ancient Mesopotamia that dates back 7,400 years. And they actually cooked the stuff up. They used that formula to make beer, and it actually did make beer. Alcohol has been used as a reward for pyramid builders. They used to feed the pyramid builders alcohol, beer, to reward them for a good day's work. It has been used as food, grain-enriched beer. That's what, wait a minute, that's the stuff mead mead is grain-enriched beer, and that's what they used to drink in England. That's what they used to drink in Western Europe. It's been used as a cure-all, laudanum, alcohol mixed with opium. It's used as a sacrament by the Jewish and Christian religions. It's been used as a water substitute because the water supply in Europe is contaminated with human waste. So when I was there, there's a reason why Europeans drink a lot of alcohol. It's because they can't drink the water. The water is contaminated. And there's nothing they can do about it. The rivers are all contaminated. So they drink alcohol. It has to have alcohol in it to kill the bacteria from the alcohol. Social lubricant, whenever and wherever it's used as a tranquilizer for whoever uses it. As a source of taxes, it is especially heavily taxed in the United States and in Europe. When I was in Europe, if you wanted to be friends with your landlord, if you lived on the economy, then you gave them alcohol because their alcohol was like really expensive, $15, $16 or $15, $20 for just a fifth of whiskey or a fifth of schnapps or whatever. I mean, really expensive stuff. And of course, we got our alcohol at the Class 6 store, and we could get it for $2 or $3. Yeah, I know.
That's my best friend in Class 6, man.
Yeah, your best friend.
That's Friday, yeah.
That's bad stuff. Throughout history, and of course, I don't think it's the same way as it used to be.
Well,
Well, the officers club and the enlisted clubs, they were mandatory when I was in the service back in the 70s and 80s.
it was
Mandatory to the
like an unsaid rule, you know?
yeah.
I didn't go though, I was like, man, I see you guys at work.
Yeah. I don't want to see any.
I just go and play pool over there once in a while, but that's it.
But when I made sergeant, I had to join the NCO club, and if you joined the NCO club, you had to buy 2 beers, you had to buy 2 drinks every time you went in. You had to buy 2 drinks. Now, normally people would buy 2 drinks for themselves, and I never went over there. There's no reason for me to go over there. But they used to have a commander's call at the NCO club, which I thought was a dirty deal. Because if I went to commander's call, which is mandatory, you have to go to this thing, then I'd have to buy 2 drinks as soon as I walked in the door. So it kind of pissed me off. I refused to go. I kept getting in trouble because I didn't go to commander's call. Because I thought it was a ripoff. It was a ripoff. And of course, it induces people to drink, and that's not good. But of course, the Air Force changed. The Air Force changed, you don't have to join the NCO club if you're an NCO anymore. And some of the NCO clubs are closing. They're making them all ranks clubs.
The only one that I really went to was when I was a drill sergeant. Because I mean, you need a freaking another one after dealing with these freaking guys that got never been away from home.
Yeah.
Behind, you know?
Babies. Sorry, I didn't say babies, I meant something else. Throughout history, alcohol has been banned for its negative effects on its users. 2,650 years ago, alcohol was banned in China. 2,500 years ago, alcohol was banned by select Buddhist sects. The ban continues to this day, and of course, that's one way you can stay away from alcohol is become a Buddhist. The gin epidemic found 20 million gallons of gin being manufactured 20 million gallons of gin being manufactured every year.
That's not enough.
It's not enough? It's hardly it. The death toll was enormous. It was controlled by heavy taxing in 1751, which reduced consumption. Prohibition in the United States with the 18th Amendment was ratified by 46 out of 48 states by 1920. Iowa was the 29th state, that's my home state, was the 29th state to ratify the amendment. It was repealed by the 21st Amendment in 1933, and it was repealed for tax reasons. They needed the revenue. This is during the Depression, and they needed the money. So they repealed prohibition. Alcohol prohibition or even control have often run into a stone wall. Attempts in sub-Saharan Africa to control beer consumption has been impossible because of the fairly nutritious home-brewed beer that provides a modicum of grain. The pilgrims loved their grog. Pilgrims, we think of pilgrims as straight-laced individuals, but they drank a lot. This idea followed through to the revolution as alcohol sales and taxation provided needed revenue to finance the war. The reality is, I mean, and they kept arguing about the Constitution during the impeachment trial. And they were saying, what were the founders thinking? Well, the Constitution was written, the biggest problem during the Revolutionary War was we didn't have any way to finance it. And everybody was too cheap to put any money into the coffers. So our government was broke. And of course, we couldn't buy anything. So we used taxation of alcohol as a good way to finance the war, as weird as that sounds. So because we were getting money from the alcohol revenue, and everybody drank, we were making a little bit more money, and of course they were able to finance the war and eventually win the war. But it was this huge argument. One of the arguments was about slavery, and it almost split the United States into three parts, and it continued that way until the Civil War. We had the West, and the West didn't include you guys because it was the West was right up to the Mississippi River. So we had all those farm guys in Indiana, Ohio, and Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. We had all those guys, and then we had the South, which they were all slave state. That was a slave state. Then we had all the manufacturing in the Northeast. So it was this huge argument taking place, and that's really what we're talking about when we're talking about the Constitution and why it was written the way it was written. So a lot of it had to do with compromise and argument, as stupid as that sounds. Anyway, temperance in the United States started in 1840, but it wasn't successful until 80 years later. They finally passed prohibition in 1920, but it actually started in 1840. There was a lot of people that didn't like what was happening to the United States because of alcohol. Alcohol continues to provide revenue for governments in the United States. The federal government taxes alcohol manufacturers $13.50 on each 180 proof gallon. We're talking about a gallon here, not a fifth. A fifth is a fifth of a gallon. We're talking about a whole gallon. The states average a little less than half that much at $6.50. So every gallon of alcohol is taxed $20. Every gallon. So if you buy a gallon of alcohol, it's going to cost you at least $20 for the taxes alone, and then of course it's going to cost you for whatever you're paying for the alcohol. I don't know anybody that buys their alcohol in gallons. Beer and wine are taxed differently. About a nickel a drink goes to the federal government per beer. Wine is taxed by alcoholic content. 14% or less is taxed at 21 cents per fifth. 14 to 21% is taxed at 31 cents per fifth. 21 to 24% is taxed at 62 cents per fifth. Naturally sparkling wine is taxed at 67 cents per fifth. Artificially carbonated wine is taxed at 65 cents per fifth. There are hundreds of different alcohols ranging from deadly poisonous to barely toxic. The alcohol that people drink is ethyl alcohol, grain alcohol, ethanol, or ETOH. And as a lab tech, of course, we didn't write any of this stuff out. That's what we put down. For dealing with alcohol, ethyl alcohol, we put down ETOH. So if you see something coming down from the lab and it says ETOH on it, they're talking about ethyl alcohol. The next most common alcohol is methyl alcohol, wood alcohol, or methanol. Isopropyl alcohol or isopropanol is the solvent used in medicine. Butyl alcohol or butanol is used in industrial processes. So the alcohol that is used to clean people's wounds or whatever, that's isopropanol. The average beverage with over 2% of alcohol is called an alcoholic beverage. It has to have at least 2%. All alcoholic beverages contain ethyl alcohol, but may acquire the other alcohols in the production process. And of course, some of these are poisonous, so you gotta be careful. Additions due to production are called congeners, which add distinctive tastes, aromas, and colors to the beverage. And of course, beer is one color, whiskey's another color, and you want a rich color. Well, a lot of times they just put an additive in there to make it the color it is. They used to, during Prohibition, they would make gin. Gin's clear, and they would want to sell it as whiskey, so they would put some brown food coloring in it or something in it to make it brown so that it looked like whiskey. Congeners may be acids, aldehydes, esters, ketones, phenols, and tannins. These are all poisons, okay? Alcohol itself is poisonous, but all the things we put in it are also poisonous. Some beverages add a number of congeners. Whiskey and brandy have the most, while beer and vodka have the least. The more congener in the beverage, the more severe the hangover. And this is one of the reasons why whiskey is such a hangover-inducing substance. Methyl alcohol, I'm sorry?
I never had hangovers.
You never had hangovers? Well, I congratulate you. Methyl alcohol, I don't think I've ever,
I drink. Well,
you don't drink anymore.
No, I don't drink anymore.
Methyl alcohol is fairly toxic and has a curious affinity for the optic nerve. During Prohibition in the United States, some bootleg manufacturers, mistakenly of course, added methanol to their beverages to increase the alcohol content. The result was often blindness, or in extreme cases, they poisoned them to death. So people would die from alcohol poisoning, as weird as that sounds. Why don't we stop right here? As much fun as I'm having talking about alcohol.